Hey everyone, Christian at Northwest, and today we're going to talk about when you actually need to change your tires. A lot of tire competitors on the market will tell you to change them much earlier than you need to. So today we're going to go over some of the common signs that you actually need new tires. You may be familiar with the penny test. It's one of the most common ways to test your tire tread depth. If you're not familiar, what you do is you take a penny, put it to the face side, put head down. If you can see the top of Abe Lincoln's head, that means it's time to replace the tire. However, this test does not encompass everything. For one, lots of tires come with different tread depths. For example, like a 35-inch mud terrain is going to come with 18 to even 21, 22, 30 seconds of tread, while a common car tire is going to come with 10. So the better way to do that, if you have access to one, is to get an actual tire tread depth gauge. And if you're under around 430 seconds, then it's time to get new tires. The second thing to look for is going to be cracking within the tread, or often called weather checking on the tires, which is when you develop these tiny cracks within the tire. If you don't know the difference between weather checking and true tire cracking, you just need to look at the cracks within your tires. If they're deep and the sides are starting to separate from each other, that's when you have a real crack and you need to start looking at new tires. But if you just have some little wrinkles in between, it's nothing to worry about. When they're in between the tread blocks, that's not necessarily something to worry about immediately, but it does let you know that your tires are nearing the end of their life. When you do need to worry though is when you start developing cracks in the sidewall. That lets you know that the tires are basically done and they should be replaced sooner rather than later. So as you can see, this tire here is cooked. You have about 130 seconds, if that, on the top. Something to keep in mind when you are measuring tread depth is the measurement that matters is the lowest point on the tire. If you have alignment wear, you may have like 830 seconds on one side and 4 on the other. Even though you have 8 on one side, that doesn't mean the tire's still good because you still are getting the traction of a worn tire on most of the surface. So with that, it's important to measure different points on the tire, highest, lowest, somewhere in between, just to get a full picture of what's actually going on. This tire here is almost 20 years old and it has cracking everywhere. Of course, we have cracking through the tread blocks, but there's a ton of cracking in the sidewall. What's dangerous about that is if left gone too long, the tire can actually blow out while you're going down the road. Since tires are made of rubber, that material can age out and that's where you get the cracking. We recommend that you don't run tires more than 7 years old. There are of course exceptions if the tires have been stored inside, the rubber's in really good shape, but what it really comes down to is the shape of the rubber. This tire in particular is super dry, super checked, so it does need to go. So if you have uneven wear and it's in the center of the tread, that means your tires have been overinflated. That's where the tire actually contacts the road and you're not getting full contact on the edges, which is arguably the most important point of contact. Something like that gone unchecked for too long can ruin the tire, so definitely always make sure you're running the correct pressure in them. Now, if you have uneven tread wear, let's say this side had 2 to 330 seconds, this had 6, that means you have an alignment issue. And that's something we'll get into in a later video where we talk about alignments, but what you do need to know as far as the tires go is that's not something that can be corrected just by a new set of tires. This particular tire was overinflated, so you have probably less than 1/32 in the middle, but still have 2 to 3 on the sides. One more obvious thing you may notice with tire wear is if your tires start handling different than when you first got them. Of course, handling is going to decrease as they lose tread, but if you notice that it's much different than a couple months ago, it'd be a good time to come have us check them out. This tire, with how low the tread was, definitely noticed a decrease in traction. When you get down to the 3 to 130 seconds range, you really start to run the risk of hydroplaning, or especially in Central Oregon, really terrible traction in the snow. If you're like me, you want to get the most money's worth out of your tires, and I run mine down to about 430 seconds. Anything lower than that, you really run the risk of hydroplaning or sliding in the snow, and you only have to crash once. It's a lot cheaper to just replace your tires than have to replace your car. One time that you definitely need to get tires as soon as possible is when you either have tire cords showing or you're down to secondary rubber. Cords are very visible and it's easy to tell. You'll see metal bands running through the tire. If that's visible, you need to get tires on literally as soon as you can. Something that's not as easy to see but is equally as important is you can get down to what's called secondary rubber. Secondary rubber is a kind of rubber that's not actually part of the outside tread, but it's part of the inner liner. It's stickier and you'll notice a color change. If you notice that, you may have, a week or two, but you really need to get tires. Something that's probably going to be the most obvious is if you start losing air in your tires. Now that's not necessarily something that's totally due to the tire. Well, something we see a lot is chrome rims will get corroded on the bead. That's where the tire touches the wheel. You can lose air there even if you don't have any leaks in the tires. But of course, if you do have an air leak in the tire, it's time to either get a patch on that or maybe look at new tires. One other thing that it might be, if it's not your beads and it's not your tires, is you could have a crack or bend. As you saw in the last video, we can repair both of those in-house. Something that may not be obvious is there's only so many places you can patch a tire. You can patch something within the middle of the tread all the way up to the edge, but you cannot patch a sidewall because you pose risk of a blowout. Something else to think about is, let's say you had a nail here and a nail there, you can't do two patches that close. Something Dave mentioned in a previous video is, we're not into fear mongering here at Northwest.
Let me try to sell you with fear. There's only 4 points of contact on the road, and if you added them up, it's less than a square foot. So, oh my gosh, you should really spend the money on tires, which you see every year for new tires. No, all joking aside, let's get serious.
If you don't need tires, we're not going to recommend them to you. We like to be upfront and honest about what condition your tires are in and when they need to be replaced. To kind of swing back to some earlier concepts, a lot of our tire competitors will recommend tires when you really don't need them. Some slight weather checking is not a big deal. You'll see that commonly on a few brands, and it's not anything to sweat about. When you get to the point where you start getting deep cracks within your tread blocks or you start getting deep cracking within your sidewall, that's when it's time to replace them. That's not necessarily something that's a safety risk immediately. Another thing you might look at is uneven wear. It really depends on how much tread you have left. If you got a newer set of tires and they have some uneven wear, just come in for an alignment. You'll be able to salvage most life out of the tires. I can't say that it's going to be everything with uneven wear, but it's not necessarily something you always have to replace. Something goes hand in hand with this is the age of your tires. The tire compound will age out after about 7 or 8 years, and you'll start to notice decreased traction and handling. An easy way to tell the age of your tires is something called the DOT code. This is going to be on both sides of your tires, but one side is going to have a 4-digit code at the very end. That is formatted as the week and the year that tire was made. A tire made early this year would have a DOT code such as 0325. However, this tire is almost 20 years old. The DOT code on it is 1905, meaning it was made in the 19th week of 2005. This is well past the age that you should be running your tires, and if you have anything that's over 10 years old, it's really time to get them replaced soon. Despite all this, it may not always be clear when you do need to replace your tires. You may see some of these things, but not others. You may have a couple different shops telling you need tires now. This is the point where we would recommend for you to come into us. There's no appointment needed for us to check your tires, and we can give you a recommendation based on the condition of them. Feel free to stop on by. We are open Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Give us a call at 541-749-0235 or shoot us an email at service@nwwheelandtire.com. Once again, I'm Christian at Northwest. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and I hope to see some of you guys soon.